Thank you everyone for joining us and welcome in. This is Regain's Organizational Spotlight. And I'm Tracy Bulandi and I'm a program associate with the Wallace Center and Pasture Project. And just a little background on what's bringing us all here today is the Regenerative Ag Idea Network, which is an online community of practice for ag educators, advocates, and leaders to be able to discuss their challenges, share successes, and peer-to-peer expertise and resources with people primarily focused in the upper Midwest, but also across the country. Also ensuring that we're supporting the efforts and history of Indigenous knowledge and practices in order to create and equitable participation and empowerment for all. So these office hours are held every second Wednesday of the month at 12 p.m. Central. We also have technical expert office hours, which are held every fourth Wednesday of the month. And both are a chance for you to connect with either a technical expert or a Regain member organization and just learn from them and ask any sort of questions you might have on their expertise. Today we have Meghan Filbert, who is a livestock program manager with Practical Farmers of Iowa. And I can share the link to our future office hours and some of the follow-up information just for your reference for future meetings. And we're welcoming you to put in your questions as they come up, and we'll have Meghan do her presentation, and then we'll open it up towards the end, about 10 or 15 minutes for a discussion. So with that, I will pass it off to Meghan.
Thanks, Tracy. Nice to be here all. When I was first asked to do the office hours today, Tracy said I could cover anything I wanted. And so I decided that since it's early March and the weather's turning and it really feels like spring here, that people are antsy to get outside and start planning, potentially planning some in-person events. So I thought that I should share PFI's plans on how we are structuring our summer events season. And I'm specifically not calling it our field day season because we're using some different terminology this year because the field days are going to look a lot different. And so I just want to point out that I added a lot of text to my slides, which I don't always like to do. And I'm not going to read through everything. I just want to talk through our plans with you and have you ask questions. But I wanted you all to be able to reference this PowerPoint in the future and really glean more information from it when the time is right for you to do so. So that's why I added a bunch of information to the slides. So I'll go ahead and start here. So as many of you may know or have maybe attended some Practical Farmers of Iowa field days in the past, we really are known for our field days. We try to host about 60 field days every summer, and we put out a field day guide that has a map in it, lists every single event in like May of each year. And our events normally span from late May or June to October. And they're all published, they're pre-planned, and they're all published in this field day guide. So it's a pretty handy thing to pass out all over Iowa. And we still get overwhelming feedback that like a bunch of people hear about our field days through this printed guide and not necessarily online. So it's pretty effective. So then, of course, last year, March came around, pandemic starts, and that's usually when the bulk of our field day planning takes place. So we quickly pivoted and we planned all virtual events. And again, I think we had around 60. And those were all through Facebook Live and recorded and are on our website for viewing. So they're archived. So what we decided to do this year is we want to take what we learned from going completely virtual last summer, take the best of that and still do some virtual events, because we have now had overwhelming feedback from our membership saying, like, we don't want you to ever get rid of the virtual events. So we'd love if there was a mix of in-person and virtual events going forward. That's what we're going to stick with. And so this year we are planning something we're calling catching up, which is small invite only gatherings. And then we're also planning the virtual field day, which is called Live from the Farm. So I'll get into both of those, but we're taking this two-pronged approach to what our summer events look like this year. So really, to just kind of start us out, we needed to think, what are our objectives for our field day season in 2021? And that number one objective is to keep PFI staff and our members and the people who attend, farmers, safe. We also had heard from our board of directors back in September that they absolutely want us to figure out a way to hold safe in-person gatherings. So they didn't want a full summer of only virtual. So that's what we've gone forth to do. Obviously, our second objective here, it's always been our goal, is to get people together to share knowledge. We believe farmers are the experts. They learn best from other farmers. And we want to provide the platform for that exchange of knowledge. So we'll still ensure that that is a priority. We also, the thing is, our field days normally are known for being completely open to the public and free. Anyone can come to them. So we want to still continue that inclusiveness, which is maybe a little harder with an invite-only event where there's 12 or less people. But I'll explain that in a bit. So we also have talked about, we now have this newly acquired virtual programming muscle that we want to just continue to build on, because there are pretty amazing opportunities, as we all know now, to reach a wider net of people, feature hosts and other farmers from far away. And the other thing that we realized last year when we were doing virtual field days is that we can show things off that you wouldn't normally be able to do with a group of 60 attendees, like something that has to do with moving cows to another pasture, potentially, if the cows are freaked out that a large group of people are there. Something that has to do with biosecurity, or during the height of garlic harvest season, we can show that off without the host feeling super stressed to have to put on an event when they're already maximized for their capacity at that height of the season. And when a lot of other vegetable farmers don't feel like they can get away from their farms. So these are like nice, the really huge positives of virtual that we want to keep intact and foster. So we knew we needed to create safe in-person events. And we're also using COVID as an opportunity to make our work become more nimble. Before, when we planned all of our field days up front in March, it was a little hard to make last minute changes because they've already been published in a field day guide, et cetera, et cetera. We're trying to be more nimble than that and adaptable now. And we're really trying to foster something we're calling, like, these field days are being radically farmer led, which I'll get to in a bit. So I just wanted to kind of set this up with the objectives that we set forth. So that first prong of the approach, in-person catching up events. So this is totally launching a new type of gathering for us. And when I mentioned radically farmer-led, all of our events are farmer-led, but this time, because it's going to be 12 people, so that 12 includes 10 invited attendees, the hosts themselves, and 1 PFI staff. So we want the hosts to actually help with the invitation list. We want to ask the host to invite their neighbors, whoever they may know. Maybe they have 8 people that they can come up with in their community or in their nearby location or in their community of farming that they know would really benefit from being at this event to learn about the specific topic. So the hosts are going to help with that invitation list. PFI staff are also going to pull from a list of farmers we know would be interested to attend that specific topic. And the host is also going to help gather RSVPs. So they just have more of a heavy hand in the logistical planning of the event, which isn't a huge ask because it's only an event for 10 people. So that's what we're calling radically farmer-led. What we aim to do is have at least 49 or 50 of these events. So they're going to take place in many different places around Iowa. And so, and most likely they're going to attract mostly local folks. The events are only going to be about an hour and a half to 2 hours. So I don't know how willing some people are going to be to travel all the way across the state to attend them. So really, we think they're just going to be more locally energizing and start an excitement for a certain thing in that specific locality or region. Like I had said, 12 people max, and masks will be required, and the events will be 100% outdoors. So we're not going to be touring the insides of facilities. Again, they're invite only, which does allow for a very targeted agenda based on the people you want to invite. When I say nimble, I mean that we're going to start out by planning about 50 events and publishing them in a field day guide. If we get over 10 people trying to RSVP for a certain event or a certain topic, we can go ahead and plan another event, either with that same host later in the summer or a different host on that same topic, and just keep adding to it and put that on our events calendar online, and it won't be in the field day guide, the printed field day guide. So we're going to start with 50 and see where that ends up. And because these events are heavily planned by the host, we and they don't have any food, we can plan more of them. They're going to be easier to plan. So one thing that we've done already, so last Friday we sent out a survey in our Practical News. It's an email newsletter that goes out every Friday. We sent out a survey for people to sign up, whether they're interested in attending a summer small gathering or if they're interested in hosting. And so now we have a running tab of people who want to attend, what topics they're interested in, and hosts that would be willing to make this happen on their farm. So so that is that's amazing that we get to mine from this survey about people who really feel comfortable leading an in-person gathering. So I also then just quickly wanted to show you our PFI catching up events page. So okay, can you see that? Tracy, can you give me a nod? Okay, Cool. So under PFI events, field days, here is the landing page for our catching up events. So essentially, we explain that events are planned on a rolling basis, but we're starting to plan now. But keep your eye out for pop-up events. And then we explain a bit about how attendance works. So if someone's interested in attending, here's the survey, and they go ahead and they start filling this out. And so then here's where we ask them what topics they're most interested to learn about, how far they're willing to drive, what days work best for them, what times work best for them, and then, would you be willing to be a host, with some additional questions. So it's just giving all of you an idea. If you're going to plan summer events and you potentially wanted to send out a similar survey, it's here to look at. Please glean from it what you can, what's relevant to you and your membership. And this is the list that staff will glean from to add to the invite list for each of these events. So I just wanted to orient you to this information on our website. And I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. So this is what we're telling hosts. So, we're still in this weird time, but while things are still a little unsettled with the pandemic, we do want to use this opportunity to the best of our advantage and roll out a season of targeted on-farm events that will get farmers together for productive networking and learning. With obviously our number one objective being safety. So just a little lingo that we're, conveying during that initial phone call or email when we're reaching out to potential hosts. So then I just wanted to, I don't need to go through all of this, but I just wanted you all to be able to reference kind of our COVID protocol. The one thing that's very important is that every host that we earmark to host a catching up event has to completely agree to these policies and agree that everyone has to be masked, that they will enforce that. One thing when we were initially planning field days for the summer, we thought, what happens if we have our normal field days where everyone's invited, they're large events, we ask at the beginning and we make it very clear when they're RSVPing that masks are required, but what happens when someone doesn't wear a mask, right? How much are we going to have to get into the role of reprimanding? And what would be, is it a 3 strikes you're out policy? We're somewhat avoiding having to deal with that by just having this invite only, being very clear up front and giving a lot of responsibility to the host and ensuring that the host totally is in agreement with what we're saying before we ask them to be a host. So the other big thing is, so obviously we want people to maintain social distancing, which is easy to do outside. The other big thing is we're not having any food, which is super sad. One of the things we love most is featuring foods, local foods from all of these farms at these events and getting to sit down for a meal together. And we just have to forego it this year, unfortunately. The other types of things that we're kind of changing up is we're going to have bottled water there. Very unfortunate. We don't want to have to do that. In the past, we've always said we'll bring big Gatorade jugs of water. We don't want you to actually buy bottled water. We'd rather you not have bottled water there. Bring water bottles, your own water bottles, and just use these big jugs of water. But we're going with bottled water this year for safety because that is our number one objective. And the other interesting thing to think about that we've had to think about is that staff shouldn't be staffing events back to back, right? Like we want staff to have at least 10 to 14 days between events that they're staffing, just because they're potential vectors. So that's a consideration internally when we go to plan who's staffing all of these events, where and when and how often. And it, however many staff we have and however many staff think that they are comfortable doing this, then goes into how many number of these catching up events can we actually put on. So the other thing is, like sign-ins, we're doing touchless sign-in, like we'll check them off. Staff will check them off. We're not going to give out cards to hand back, and we're also not going to give out paper evaluations at the event like we normally would. It's all going to be by email after the event. And then just a reminder that if folks, attendees are vaccinated or have COVID antibodies, they're still going to be required to wear masks. Everybody wears a mask. So then the question came up about welcoming new people and how do you do that with invite-only events? Because on the surface, it seems like that's going to be difficult. And we've thought about this and gotten feedback in the past. Sometimes when an event is completely wide open, anyone can show up. It's not an automatic green light for people to feel welcome. I think a lot of times a personal invitation, which is what they're going to get this summer, is more inviting. So we certainly are inviting the public and our entire membership to join the small gatherings invitation list by taking that survey. The other thing is, in order to invite and welcome new people, we would like them to host. If they want to be included, would they feel comfortable hosting something? So we could have a new generation of event hosts. And we can accommodate for hosts that show interest throughout the season because we're planning pop-up events on a rolling basis and being nimble, like I had mentioned. We're really working with our farmer host to invite the right mix of folks. So neighbors that they have always wanted to get on board that maybe wouldn't attend a large event next door and would rather have a personal invitation. Nearby people doing similar things that they'd like to get to know better. Someone not too far away that they know could contribute to the conversation. So for example, maybe someone from the local economic development authority in their county. And then of course, PFI staff are going to pick 2 or 3 people to also attend from our list of people interested in that topic. And then another tactic of welcoming new people is we have 99 counties in Iowa. We're going to try to start with half of them and host in 49 different counties. Eventually, we'd love to host an event in every 99 counties. We are limited by our capacity to do so. So anyway, we don't think it's going to be that difficult to find 10 people to come to 49 or 50 different events. And so this is really kind of how we're framing the welcoming piece, because part of BFI is welcoming everyone. We say that all of the time and we mean that. And so we want to express how we can still do that through small invite-only events. Now for the second prong. So I just want to make sure I'm answering Caroline's question. Caroline, you say they're public. So yeah, so they're not fully public events. They're invite-only events. And they're not going to be advertised freely. Like our field day guide is mostly going to focus on the live from the farm virtual events. The invite-only events aren't going to be publicized freely. They're going to be publicized to the list of folks that we decide to invite. So that's going to look different. And we're going to have to navigate that a little differently. Do you want to, Caroline? Yeah, give me
Hi,
some
Meghan.
feedback. Hi.
I probably misheard you. I thought you had said early that you were going to be publishing these in a field guide. And so I thought, wait a minute. So I probably heard you wrong. I know about your annual field guide because I am a member of PFI and I get it every year. But I probably misconstrued what you're publishing in your annual field guide that will not include these 50 or so invitation only events.
I could have been clearer earlier. I said we are going to publish a field day guide still. And I'm sure you implied that would mean we add all of these 50 events. It's really going to focus in on our virtual live from the farm events, which we don't have a number of. We don't know what number we're going to do. Probably, I'm guessing 30 to 40. Those will be publicized in our field day guide. And we will make it very clear, if you're interested, that on-farm small gatherings are happening. If you're interested, please go fill out the survey.
Got it. Great. Thanks for clarifying.
Absolutely.
Makes sense.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
So,
really great idea.
So live from the farm is now what we're calling our online field days. And we kind of just wanted to brand them and call them something a little different because we may have a different iteration of online field days in the future. So for now, we're saying they're live from the farm, and essentially it's similar to what we did last year with virtual field days. So they were like 30-minute to an hour nuggets of focused on like 1 to 3 different specific topics, and it's filming a farmer live in the field. And it was all through Facebook Live. And this year we're going to transition to YouTube Live. Instead, there were a few issues with Facebook. For the most part, it worked really well. And I also think using Facebook worked well to reach a broader audience. But we're thinking we're trying YouTube Live this year, which is what we've heard from our communications team. So, like I had said earlier, these events are really going to focus on filming during times of the season when farmers can't get away from their farms and filming things that wouldn't otherwise allow visitors. It's pretty nice to actually be able to, like zoom in on something very close that you just wouldn't really get to see in detail if you were at a field day with 80 people all standing around. How we're staffing these live from the farm events. So last year, because we had to plan on a whim really quickly, we sent the farmers tech equipment, and we did tech tests with them, and we asked them to make sure they had Zoom downloaded on their phones and to practice with their spouse and all of that. That was a lot of back and forth. This year, with advanced planning, we are sending one communication staff who is a trained videographer and one production assistant to hold things for that person while they're filming, and one program staff to guide the conversation and interview with the host. So we're going to have like a production team basically go out to the farm to film this live from the farm event. We're excited about this because this is going to also allow us to get more reusable footage for other things in the future. Whereas a lot of our virtual field day stuff, because it was just totally on a whim, or it felt like that, we can recirculate that archived field day, but we're not using it for other things. So that's just a little glimpse into the virtual side of things. I can certainly answer more questions for this group about the technical details once I know more about them. We're just starting the planning process, so this is all I know at this point. But we're certainly willing to share like how you actually use YouTube Live in the future. So with that, that's really what I wanted to share. And so I just want to have a discussion with all of you. I'm curious what all of you are planning. Have we missed something that we should incorporate? Yeah, please ask me whatever questions you have.
I actually have a question.
Great.
How long did it take you guys to, you said you had to pivot very quickly when COVID happened. So how long do you think it really took for you to develop a new process that actually worked? Or is it something that you think is still like ongoing?
So thinking back to last year, mid-March is when we basically start planning all of our field days. So we had already started planning in-person events, and the very first virtual field day, I believe, took place May 27th or somewhere around then. So let's just say we had like 2 months and a couple weeks to make the change, to make the shift. And so we a lot of that shift took place with our communication staff, because they were figuring out all of the stuff around how you stream Zoom, how you link Zoom to Facebook Live. How can we order a bunch of different headsets and earpieces for all of our farmers, and get them sent out to them right away. So communication staff had like the bulk of all of that, and we feel so fortunate that they were able to rise to that occasion. For program staff like me, planning the content of the programs, it was up to us to look at our list of regular field day hosts that we already were thinking about tapping, figure out who of them would actually be able to pivot. Like, do they have self-service at their farm, for one? Like, are they going to be able to broadcast steadily from their farm? Are they even willing to be on video? Or would this just be better for an in-person event in the future and we tag it for a later year? And now that we're going virtual, who do we know of our farmer membership that is like pretty savvy? They're direct marketers and they have social media and they're already using this kind of stuff and doing like live stream stuff. Who do we know that maybe we weren't thinking of already that we could ask to host one of these? So we kind of just had to put our heads together in that way. Because of how like everything we had to learn really quickly, we took those lessons into our annual conference. Of course, we're using them again for this season of Live from the Farm. So I would say, I mean, on paper, it took us like 2 to 3 solid months to adapt. I remember having to host my very first virtual field day and figuring out the screens and making sure I had everything pulled up and like freaking out. We all did, like when we had to host our first one. And then by the end of the season, after we'd done like 10, we were like, all right, we got this. We know how to help the farmer troubleshoot all of this stuff. So, and to be honest, I feel happy that we were forced to do that, because we had always talked about doing virtual events prior to that, but we've never been forced to. And a lot of us drug our feet on like actually having to learn how to make all of those pieces work to broadcast something live. And then it forced us to do it. And now we're feel like pros. So that's how it went.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great to hear. Like a lot of organizations do have to adapt.
Caroline.
Megan, I had a couple questions. One is did I see on your screen that you'll be showing the Live from the Farm at the same time every week, kind of a regular
Oh,
thing?
yes.
And
Thank
so-
you for catching that. Yep.
And so will it be like live every week, or will you actually send your production team and staff to do your filming on, a Tuesday at 3:00 or whatever, but the regular time will be Friday at 10 a.m. or something like that? How live will live be? I don't mean to put
Thank
you on
you.
the spot.
That's a great question. I don't know 100%. I think we truly want it to be live. But if, if we find out through a prior tech test that live might not work so well, we'll have to adapt and it won't truly be live.
Okay.
So you know what, Caroline, I don't know that for sure, and I should know. So I can follow up with this group, but we haven't, I don't know. I'm sure the communications team has a plan.
Well,
But
part of the reason I'm asking is because last summer I helped a couple different people and organizations. Just I was doing logistics in the back. I'm not tech savvy per se, but and we were also trying to take questions from people live. At these were, for lack of a better word, they were being called farm tours. They obviously were not very farm toury, but they were live on a farm with the farmers in real time. And so we were striving to also take incoming questions from people who were out in Radio Land listening. And so I was wondering if you guys have sorted out whether and how you're going to have it be interactive. Maybe that's the word.
Good question, Caroline. So that's jogging my memory. Last year, a lot of our virtual field days were live. This person is in the field, but we're going to cut to a pre-recorded video of them interceding last week, right? And then we go back to them live and they talk about it and they answer the questions coming in through Facebook chat. So I'm sure there'll be an element of that because we really loved that we were able to use some pre-recorded video because again, it's those types of things where like a farmer says, oh, it's gonna rain, I got to do the thing, right? And you can't always plan for that when it's truly live. So it's great to have an outlet for that kind of stuff and have the farmers equipped to be ready to do it. But again, we want there to be some planning involved because we want this to be reusable. So we would rather have that video recorded on our equipment by our videographer who got the sound right and who got the film right. So ideally it'll be less of farmer pre-recorded videos. The other point I really wanted to make is that yes, we are going to air them weekly on that, the same day, same hour. We think that just works better for our members' calendars. It's Tuesday and it's noon and it's time to tune in again, instead of just having a smattering and you have no idea when it might take place. So we're going to try to be systemic in that way. You asked one more question that I also don't have a great answer to right now is how do we get the real feedback if we're doing it on YouTube live? I know you can comment on YouTube, but I don't know like exactly what function we're going to use for intaking questions, and I have to find out.
No problem. I do have another question about outreach, but you can address that after some other people have asked questions.
Sure.
I want to know how you're advertising things, but it'll come up.
Yep. Jane?
Yeah, this has been great. Thanks for talking us through this. I'm curious about like what kind of follow-up you're doing and like connecting people, because I know like for us, like that's one of the really unique things about in-person field days is like people are meeting each other and then like getting phone numbers and staying connected that way. And I'm curious if you all have some best practices for that, like post-event.
Awesome question. We haven't really created some sort of like standard operating procedure on how we'll do it this summer. In the past, it's been is everyone comfortable sharing their contact information? If so, please list it. I, as the facilitator, will send this out and, send this out after the event. So I'm guessing there will be some sort of invitation to do that by the host, which I'm guessing it will be more of a host responsibility because again, they're they're responsible for inviting, 8 of the 10 people, and they probably they may already have a decent relationship with them. So I would imagine there's going to be a built-in process for that. It's just going to be, we need to determine what the host is responsible for and what the PFI staffer is responsible for. And I don't know that yet, Jane. And that actually is an awesome thing for me to ask our events director on how we're going to handle that. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Caroline, go back to your question, outreach.
Yeah, I mean, obviously what do you guys call it? Lovely catch up. I really love how
Catching
you're
up.
distinguishing between the two forms of summer events. The catching up, obviously I get about outreach. It's going to be very internal. But in terms of the live on the farm, I wondered how you will do outreach so that people, even if they don't know what next Tuesdays at 10 a.m. or whatever program is going to be. I love how you're framing it as something that me out in Radioland could rely on a regular basis. It's like my favorite world music show on Saturday nights. Like,
Exactly.
don't talk to me after 5 o'clock because Jonathan Overby's on. So
Yeah.
you're obviously trying to brand your sort of virtual events that way, which is really commendable. But how are you going to tell the world to tune in on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. or whatever it is?
Yeah, so obviously the field day guide and our regular email newsletter on Fridays, and just using our listservs, right? Like I'll send out all the livestock events to our livestock discussion list. That's normal. That's what we would normally do. Last year we paid for Facebook ads. And it worked really, really well. Like the reach was impressive. And I'm sure we'll do it again. Another thing to consider, I'm just thinking about, paid advertising always costs money, a lot of money. We normally, in a normal year, we pay our field day host $600 to host a regular field day and reimburse for expenses up to a certain amount, up to $600, I think. So let's just say every field day costs about $1,200, an in-person field day. This year, our small gathering hosts are getting paid $300. And then there's a lot less expense reimbursement. That means, we're grant funded to put on these field days, and most of our grants we had originally written in for a regular field day payment, the $1,200. So we have been able to talk with some of our funders about, shuffling that money around. Less money goes to put on the event, and so more money could go towards advertising. So anyway, we were able to pay for advertising, and we'll continue to do that. Whether that's, I know we'll do it through Facebook, probably other places as well. And then of course we try to get the press release out through radio, through different local newspapers, and social media.
Great.
And Caroline, if there's other things that come up and I'm forgetting about them, I'm happy to tell you about, but that's what's coming up on the front of my head right now. I don't know if we'll get more creative.
Cool. Last year, your virtual field events, do you have a sense of how many people they attracted in real time?
In real time, I think our average was about 35 people.
And then on YouTube, will YouTube tell you, like I'm still, confessions, I'm still watching workshops from the January PFI annual conference.
Yeah.
And I'm not using YouTube because I, at least as of last week, was still able to go in through my conference registration.
Yes.
Okay. So I was sort of wondering, when I do that, can you tell that, oh, that workshop has got another hit? Or that field event last year, oh, has got another hit. When it's not real time, but it's still, somebody's gone back and looked at it. Can you
We
tell that?
can't tell. We don't get a notification. Well,
Mhm.
I don't. Maybe someone in communications
Sure.
can look at Google Analytics and see like where the spikes are on when people are viewing. I don't think anyone is actually notified when it gets another hit.
Yeah.
What I can do though, like what I just did, I pulled up pasture farrowing field day from last year. It's on YouTube. There's been 375 views. Whereas in person, there may have been 40. I don't know exactly how many went to that. So that for grant reporting and like essentially for grant reporting and for our future planning, we're going by the views on YouTube. You know, we could actually access this on Facebook too. It's cataloged on Facebook, and there might be a way that they count views. And we also use Google Analytics. So we do have someone on staff who is like charged with doing that. But essentially it's us going into the archived version and seeing how many views are on it. Yeah.
Sort of in the same vein. So PFI is a membership organization, and at least in my old LSP days, it was a cardinal sin to miss any opportunity to do a membership pitch. And so while I'm deviating a little bit from the how-tos of doing virtual and how to do events this summer, I'm just interested, how is PFI, what is your attitude about doing a membership pitch, either at your small gatherings or your live from the farm gatherings? Have you guys sorted that out?
We haven't yet. We haven't created our essentially like our intro script yet, but I'm guessing that the PFI staffer that's at Catching Up event, or the PFI staffer who is facilitating the live from the farm, it's built into our beginning. You know, we have our intro slide. This is PFI. We're a membership organization. Please, you know, it's never a very heavy pitch, but it's just, this is what we do. We are membership based. Please visit our website.
Absolutely. Good.
Yeah. So that will absolutely be built in.
I mean, that's one of the downsides to the virtual side of things, is that you don't have your display table, and even in your small gatherings, I think I read, you know, you're not going to have paperwork for people to pick up and put down. That's the point. That's part of it. So that's a missed opportunity from a building an organization. I don't even know if you'll be able to do like a virtual sign-in for your weekly live from the farm events. If somebody, actually, could you address that? If somebody wanted to be there in real time, like for this, you know, we all registered in order to get the link.
We will require RSVPs.
Okay.
Yep. And I think how we did it last year, we required RSVPs, but when it was taking place on Facebook real time, you could just click in. Maybe you had to enter email. I can't exactly remember. I mean, we want to be able to collect as much data as possible, but not make it impossible for someone that just sees it to attend, right? Something I want to mention, Caroline, on the membership pitch and like less opportunity to do that. A tactic we've always tried to foster, and I'm sure we'll do it again this summer, is when we have field day hosts hosting an in-person event, it is much more powerful when you get that host to tell their group why they're a member and ask the group to become members, because to explain the value that they get in membership from being part of this community. And so that's just a very specific ask that we suggest to our hosts to say, like, we know that, you've been a member for this many years and I've worked with you to do all these things. We know that you value this. Can you make it a point of folding that in to your introduction or throughout the field day?
That's good.
Just to kind of play up what the staffer says about practicalfarmers.org,
Yeah, that's right.
So I think everyone should be doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
no doubt about that. And in fact, that a PFI staffer doesn't need to say a word. It's way more.
Exactly.
It's way more better coming
Exactly.
from your
Yep.
constituents and from a committed member already. Yeah, absolutely right.
Or if we have like board members at the events, we would ask them to raise their hand and then and point them out in our introduction and say, if you have questions about membership or why Vic is a member, please turn to him and ask and have start a conversation with him, like those types of tactics.
And then I suppose also at each event you can promote the other events in an appropriate fashion. So there's always this piggybacking on helping people to engage with PFI in another opportunity.
Exactly. We also, this is something that I want to be more clear on, but what we're starting to think about is that because we're only having limited number of events in person and a limited amount of people that can come to them, we are ensuring through our internal organization that like there's not a bunch of repeat people going to all these events. Right? We want you to, at least you can attend one in-person event, but we need to, everyone that wants to attend an in-person event, we need to make sure can get to at least one. It's when we're now going to start planning additional pop-up events that's when we can start inviting people for a second time, especially if it's around the same topic and that group of people wants to dive into it even deeper. So we're going to be really cognizant about like repeat attendees, which is unfortunate because I know people that build their whole summers around going to field days. So that's just another element that we have to keep in mind and make sure we're really organized internally on the back end to ensure that we're fair.
Especially, yeah, I'm assuming that is largely going to be in play with your catching up in-person events to try to.
That's what I'm talking about. Yep, exactly.
Very good. That's really good.
Yep.
That you thought that through. Good. Well, and don't forget, everybody, we're hoping that this is I won't say temporary, but in this configuration, that it's temporary, and that Meghan, I know that you guys, from what you've said, that you've had a lot of positive feedback for some virtual options, and we've all heard that in lots of different arenas. That in that sense, the genie is not ever going to go fully back in the bottle. But how about if we have the genie out of the bottle, and please let's do our in-person field days and our kitchen table conversations where everybody hug a mug around a potluck. God, I hope we get to that, but we're not there yet. And in the meantime, I just so applaud, Meghan, what PFI is doing, and your collective thoughtfulness is so evident.
Thanks, Caroline.
Really
and I will say, in a perfect world, we'll have regular field days, everyone's invited, huge events, bunch of food, potlucks, right? We'll have virtual, live from the farm type things to tune into, and we'll also have small gatherings that may or may not be invite only, maybe, where some folks might just thrive in that environment and feel more comfortable in that environment, and where you can really dig down deep into something. So we'll have all of them, and a streamlined process to plan those. So we're just going to keep building.
Yeah. Well, it was very honest of you, Meghan, to acknowledge it, that some of you guys sort of got led into the virtual stuff, kicking and screaming. I mean, we're like that, aren't we?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, that was me. Because I thrive,
Yeah.
but basically because I'm an extrovert and I thrive off of energy from other people, and I want to be at in-person events. Like that is our bread and butter, and that is why I work at PFI, you know? So it was like, wow, okay, we have to do this. And I just wouldn't have been as serious about learning the skills necessary if I wasn't forced to.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for attending. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We'll be sure to share the recording and any follow-up information with you after this meeting, and hopefully we'll see you in future office hours and on Regain. So thank you everyone for joining, and thank you so much, Megan, for an excellent presentation.